Listen, it's the perfect night to try and resurrect something that you think is dead. Hold on, I just gotta find it. It's somewhere around here. Oh, there it is. Oh yeah. Let's get her done. We'll bring that back too. So it's been October, and I figured what better time of the year than to do a video on feminism for Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Oh, what was that? You thought I was gonna do one on Halloween or horror stuff? Oh, yeah, I guess I can do that too. Wait a minute, how the hell are you gonna do both? What I'm gonna shine light onto is not necessarily gonna be specific horror movies that are hidden gems, but more of shining light on feminist themes inside horror films that you've probably seen. So it's more of an idea rather than a specific thing, like a game, a movie, or anything of that nature. Because I originally was gonna do a video on just one of these movies, and then I just realized I can just do this all in one big thing. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a ton of films that really go over a lot about exploits of women and women ideas. But holy crap, am I just gonna stick to a certain amount? There, trust me, is easily like 10 more movies that I can touch on. And feminism in cinema kind of tends to be a touchy subject in general. Whether the art form of the film did justice to speak for women, I can't judge that, and that is not for me to say. However, I do feel like horror films can kind of be the underdog a lot of the time. Now, are a lot of them misogynistic? I'm not going to deny that, because a lot of the recent stuff that seems like it's trying to actually attack it, like with superhero films and stuff, it seems like some of it's good and some of it falls flat. With horror, it feels like a lot of the times there's a strong female protagonist. But like I said, don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean all films are saints, but it just tends to be more of a trope. For tales as old as time, most commonly when a woman is inside of a story that has been fictionally made, they are most primarily the love interest. They're not necessarily usually the main character in the story. Not that it never has, but it hardly ever was. When a lot of conflict happens, or especially with action and adventure, there tends to be a damsel in distress, just to raise the stakes higher for the male protagonist to come and save the day against the main villain. It's just a very basic story as it gets. Most women leads of the golden age in cinema seemed like they were kind of more intended for romance or musicals. And most of these roles it seemed like they were looking for women who were good looking, who could sing and dance. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's obviously a lot of exceptions, but it just seemed like overall that just kind of was the tradition in cinema. And the 60s is definitely where the breakaway overall begins, to where I'm talking about, to where women are there for the love story kind of cliche. And it kind of starts to turn, and it's kind of where horror picks up. And I'm not saying every horror movie with the female lead, she's a tough hero, because I think part of the intent on why it worked, and so early as it was with horror, is that you're telling a suspenseful story and unveiling the story's dangers. And what amplifies that tension is having the one who experienced all of it is someone who is vulnerable as possible. So I definitely don't want to gloss over the reality from producers and writers being aware of how the world is to their audience at this time. Because this is the one era where the damsel in distress continued to exist in storytelling.
Many films still had the man come in to stop the monster or villain and would help her escape. But at the same time, you can only go so long in a genre that pushes the envelope with gore and nudity and what else, that you start to do other daring things.
Early stages of civil rights movement and exploit films, a lot of women were starting to get written more as main characters. They weren't co-starring as much. But what's interesting about the horror movement is that it kind of showed that women can not only be a hero, but some of these films, it shows how some of these women can be a villain. And I know it doesn't really sound very pro-feminist to praise a woman being a villain in a horror film, but in the mindset of pre-civil rights, you have to imagine that men viewed women as very belittled. So it's kind of like these films are showing like we can also be a threat.
Now who's the damsel in distress? Me? Straight up.
So this talk about villains is actually where I want to stop for our first movie I want to talk about.
Whatever Happened to Baby Jane is an insanely layered film correlating to what I'm talking about here. Because here you have Bette Davis and Joan Crawford, two famously talented women of the golden era in roles about being former stars no longer wanted in Hollywood. And there is a lot of known history about these two ladies not being able to get along with each other. But it is very interesting to see that, knowing that these two women did what they had to do to get their name out there in the real world of their looks, of their singing and talent. Also, this movie shows us the common tragic outcomes of no longer being needed in Hollywood. Being both a child star and having physical health conditions that is concerning. And with these reasons, it takes the humanity out of the job and it challenges their sanity of the product they're viewed as into the industry. But also handles more of what it means to be a woman in a society that heavily relies on beauty and physical needs. And it makes you ask, is there more to a woman than just that? And it's really painful to watch that, because aside from watching these sisters who should directly as families should love and support each other, only to see it filled with hate and torment when they should be working together against the odds of the world that is stacked against them. And what's interesting is that the only one who doesn't catch on or feel suspicious of Jane is the piano player that happens to be a man. And I say this because the piano player's mother and the housekeep see far past Jane Hudson's weirdness to know what she's up to, which is kind of like the real world. A lot of times men just overlook what a woman might be planning to do. Meanwhile, other women see past that and they call it. And just because us men are just completely stupefied by beauty, I guess. And with the many layers of context, the performances done by these two actresses are so well done for their own need of style that it really shows that these two golden era actresses could do more than just sing and dance. That Crawford could pull off such a distressing role, and meanwhile the entire tone of horror completely relies on Davis, as not only for her physical appearance of this uncanny makeup, but from her facial expressions, the range of her unsettling girly voice when she talks like a little kid, while she's switching to this maniacal laugh of all the trauma that she's causing, and her use of just unremorseful emotions of the more dramatic scenes come into play is just this broad spectrum of just talent. For if she could only pull off the unique horror elements, we really wouldn't feel the stakes have risen in the suspense, if at least we didn't feel at least a little empathy of her upbringing as a child star and the relationship of her father. The film overall has an excellent pacing of shifting these tones with the help of its editing and the music and the scene composure, but her acting is what really holds it all together.
So remember when I said I didn't really have any hidden gems to shine light onto, like films? Well, I'm going to be honest with you. I lied. It seems to be my little Halloween prank.
If there's one actual hidden gem I'm going to shine light onto today, it's going to be John Carpenter's 1978 film. Oh, no, not Halloween. It's a made-for-TV film named Someone's Watching Me. And I want to make a heavy emphasis on how much this is a precursor film to Halloween.
Think of this film as if Carpenter had the idea of Halloween in the back of his mind, but between production authority, he was held back tremendously.
But overall, the film is mainly focused on the insight of a woman at a time of the 70s, and she's living on her own and is being harassed by a stranger throughout the film. And it gives us this tension of this paranoia that she feels, because it can be any man at any time. And with this film, it really emphasizes about how a lot of the men around her just can't accept the fact of just her being able to just be by herself, that she can't just abide in the world. I can go into more detail about this film, but I feel like In Praise of Shadows does a well more deserved coverage of this film. Anything that I'm going to say, he's just going to take the words out of my mouth. So if anything, I would recommend watching his video in his channel, just in general. There's always good stuff on horror. So I'll let him speak for this film.
The reason why I started off with this one was because this being made the same year as Halloween puts a lot of context and new light on how I see Halloween and understanding where John Carpenter's background was coming from when making this. Anybody who's a big Halloween fan knows that when John Carpenter chose 2 masks for this movie, that he specifically asked for a clown mask and just a man's face of a mask. And we all know the rest is history, with it being a William Shatner mask. And then on top of that, what they did was basically just made a blank, pale face, almost like it's a default man. And this is where I really feel like Michael is that representation of being the evil side of man. And it's kind of like the what makes a man a serial killer, an abusive boyfriend, a predator, and such. So it's almost like this kind of warning tale of it. As the girls leave school, exciting for fun, he kind of lurks in the shadows of the neighborhood. And ironically, in the daytime, out in the sunlight, just to show it really could be any man in your neighborhood.
I mean, throughout the entire film, Linda doesn't really get the impression of Michael being evil, and if anything, she says she thinks he's cute. But Laurie clearly sees past all of that. And Annie definitely didn't like who they thought was driving, but I still feel like Laurie was the only one that felt like something was definitely off, and he probably didn't go to school with them. I guess that's probably because she also saw him in that car earlier while she was in school. So she definitely is about her wits at this point. But what gets interesting is that it's like she's the only one that's aware of the possible threat of men around her at any corner, while her girlfriends are just completely oblivious to it. I mean, Annie really starts to think Laurie is losing it, even when she's walking with her and Laurie just sees him. And of course, Laurie looking for Michael, and she bumps into Sheriff Brackett. I feel like that kind of gives like a hint that could be, a cop or your best friend's dad. She tells Annie about, I saw a guy in the backyard, and then she just says it's Mr. Riddle. There was even additional TV footage in 1981 that has Laurie telling Linda about seeing Michael in the backyard, and she responds with suggesting maybe he was a fellow classmate who just wanted a date. And even Annie calls back, also saying that, well, if he's cute, ask him out. Both Annie and Linda actually suspect Michael to be any other man up until their deaths.
If we remember, Michael isn't the only killer in this story. Because Carpenter also lets us know the impact of a man's actions and what it can do to a town, because Michael isn't the only boogeyman implied here in the minds of people. Because if we remember, the groundskeeper of the cemetery informs us of a story that hasn't left him of another man's doings. Now, we don't necessarily get the full story of what he tells us, but we pretty much get the intentions of where he was going with it.
I feel like this is not only saying that the man that you could be in a relationship could sneak up on you and be your killer or your threat, but also kind of reflects a little bit on Someone's Watching Me, on how the police really weren't much help up until things are too late.
because coincidentally enough, Charles Cyphers is also the cop in that movie as well.
Sheriff Brackett really, similarly, isn't really helpful to anyone or Dr. Loomis. Dr. Loomis is kind of just calling in, he's warning him about all this. By the end of the film, Sheriff Brackett actually starts to doubt it. And then when he finally does start to think that way, literally right after that, Tommy sees that evil carrying Sheriff Brackett's own daughter after being murdered. And you can't tell me that that wasn't intentionally edited that way for the pacing of the story. Halloween is a night for trickery, but he's kind of like being a warning sign to Tommy to not do that, to where it could lead you down the path of being an evil man.
So it makes me wonder if that was kind of the whole intention of choosing Halloween to begin with. I mean, overall, it was filmed in the middle of the summer in California. Because Halloween is kind of a mischievous night for your early roots to do evil things. And it kind of makes you just ponder how long do those evil things linger inside of you until you become an adult, before you become an actual man. An example of this early signs of evil is like how Tommy gets bullied by Richie. What it does is it creates this fear and this hype of the boogeyman to Tommy, and it really frightens him. And what that does is really makes it feel like, to me, that Tommy is kind of like the only pure male in this film. Tommy's parents even try to steer him away from certain things that he reads. Here, Laurie is telling him a story that we all believe that he likes, but what he really wants to do is read the edgier stories that even Laurie says, I could see why your parents don't want you to read these.
The moment he tries to do any kind of trickery, he tries to scare Lindsay. And in that moment that he does that, he sees Michael. He sees the boogeyman. He sees that warning sign of, oh yeah, I probably shouldn't do this. The whole time in the laundry room, Annie thinks it's actually Paul.
Oh, is this one of your cheap trips?
Primarily because guess what? He got in trouble doing hijinks in school. And I love the dialogue that Annie has with Paul, because she says, keep your shirt on. That's all you ever think about. And obviously he says the same thing. And because she defends herself by saying, I think about a lot of things. But honestly, throughout the film, that it really doesn't show. I mean, overall, right after this, she swindles Laurie into watching Lindsay just so she can go fool around with him. Which is funny how she does it, because it's like Laurie only agrees just so Laurie can get out of potentially fooling around with Ben Tramer, which was clearly potentially going to work. But it's kind of a nasty thing Annie does here, because she just obviously uses that against her. Annie's kind of not really a great babysitter on top of this, because as a side note, I did so deep into this film while making this video that it was beautiful, honestly. I had a rekindle of a love for it when the bombshell clicked that Lindsay most likely didn't go trick-or-treating that night. I don't know if it was because of Annie or if it was because her parents chose not to, but it was something I had never sat and thought about. I mean, with Tommy, he is in his Halloween costume of a spacesuit, and I believe he's eating out of a bag of candies, so I can just safely assume that he at least did. But it's this kind of stuff right here is why I'm talking about it in this video tonight. This is what I want to shine light onto. Not that you should watch Halloween, but look at this crazy stuff that you probably didn't know. People talk about how deep you can get into The Shining, but Halloween is so much layered on what you think is the way it is, and then you end up finding out something new.
So anyways, circling back to what I was talking about with pulling pranks on Halloween,
I start to wonder if this is the meaning Michael is ultimately, how far can you take a Halloween antics? On top of the headstone stunt, he wears the ghost costume and he's placed on bodies in particular ways to scare Laurie. Sheriff Brackett blames his rope and mask stealing to kids.
Yes, only a child would love this face.
Which, to be honest, is what gives off the can be any man in your neighborhood idea. But not only from the aspect of the film someone is watching me, but from the fact that this is a trickful part in any body can be in a costume. It's Halloween night. It's that evil taking shape of a boogeyman for a body on Halloween.
It's really interesting to break down how much planning Michael must have done during this night, because for a man who mostly stands there more than half the film, this man is extremely busy. Because who knows how long Michael was in the car before Annie gets in there. It's almost like the moment she dropped off Lindsay, it was confirmed that she was going to Paul's. So this man had to have been in the car, locked himself in to let her go get the keys, because it's kind of weird that she goes to the car without keys, mind you. And then he had to have unlocked it when she got back, because if you notice, she goes back to the handle and just opens it. She doesn't do anything with the key to unlock it. There's even a close-up shot that basically tells me he's just playing games with her.
It's like Halloween really has this man still acting like a 6-year-old goofball in the back of this car. But even though it is kind of funny to sit and think about, it really is no different from any of the other guys in this movie that are just doing pranks.
Because to further back this idea up,
there's just one more prank I have left to mention that the good old genius of Michael Myers kind of slid right past everybody, or at least slid past most people. But before I get to that, I do want to at least say,
I really think there's a lot between Laurie and Tommy resembling Michael and his sister. It really is just them having similar ages, but I think Michael just watches them because maybe he sees this bond he didn't have with his sister. You gotta imagine when he sees Laurie just come up to him, maybe he doesn't see her as his sister, but he does see her with Tommy. Because remember, it's not only Laurie that gets stalked here at first, because so does Tommy. So the way that he stalks both of them is what really makes me believe there's definitely a psychosis that developed with Michael being abandoned on Halloween night like that as his sister. And I think it really clicks with him with Laurie and Tommy, seeing how well they bond with each other, because guess what? That's exactly what Laurie is doing. She's babysitting Tommy on Halloween night.
It definitely was unintentional for Linda to be on the phone with Laurie. But when Laurie gets on the phone with Michael, it is definitely gets this eerie sense of togetherness. Feels a little bit like fate, similar to her showing up at his doorstep. I say fate specifically because it's only what Laurie was being taught at school that day, remember?
Whereas Samuels felt that, fate was like a natural element, like earth, air, fire, and water.
It feels like you're kind of being told that it's only a matter of time before Laurie falls victim to his evil as well. Which, with the feminist theme, that would make it feel like it's telling us that even women who do everything they can to prevent being a victim are essentially still doomed.
Laurie may have been the only woman in this film that was aware of Michael's threat, because not only her girlfriends, but even Nurse Chambers was also underestimating the threat of Michael.
Don't you think we could refer to it as him?
But even though she was fully aware of his danger, Michael still found a way to get her into his traps, because it was not Michael's intention to call Laurie. However, when he heard her on the phone, his next move was to flash the lights at the Wallace's house to lure her into the house.
Michael also set up the trap before she even left. The front door was locked, and the only way in was through the glass door on the side that was opened intentionally, because if you look at the last scene with Bob, he made sure to close it. So it's kind of clear that it was Michael's intent for her to go that way. If you notice, a rustling sound is kind of made when Laurie makes it to the living room. So it's possible that this is when Michael sets the rake in front of the door and locks her in there. Yes, Michael's doing these traps, but when he does it to Laurie, this is where it gets interesting. Because here with Laurie in the scene, it's really reflective to the opening scene. Only instead of Michael, it's now Laurie. She walks through the back of the house, through the kitchen, to go upstairs to find that the babysitter is dead. It's really interesting because I really truly believe Michael set all of this up so he could tell and let this babysitter know someone who is possibly he sees as his sister say, hey, this is what you did to me. Because what does Laurie see when she gets up there? She sees the babysitter, Annie, with whose tombstone above her?
Seeing how detailed this prank is, it makes you wonder if that what he was thinking about all those years while he was locked up, or the moment he just saw Lori.
I'm trying not to say Michael is specifically a cautionary tale for just women. I think he overall just embodies evil in general. That I think Carpenter kind of steered him as part of that as well. Because Michael doesn't just kill women in this movie. He kills just as many men as he does women. I mean, if anything, none of those men, aside from Bob, follow the rule of you sex, you die from Scream. Because Lester got gypped out of his date that Annie lied about. But to kind of conclude this on this note, there's a pivotal point in the film that has many fans discuss the true meaning of it, so I'm going to try and say it as accurately as possible on my end. So the twist about this film is that the entire movie is that while people in town all witness Michael, all but 2 people are oblivious to the threat that he is. And meanwhile, we're built on the suspense of the audience who also know his threat and are yelling at everyone as if we're with Dr. Loomis, warning the evils of him. Because while they are near this threat, Loomis is building the hype of how supernatural Michael really is. How he is more than just a boy who snapped. And we get this climax of Lori facing off with Michael because she was fully aware of this wolf in sheep's clothing the entire time. The confrontation finally ends by her removing the mask and revealing the true wolf, only to discover the man under the mask looks nothing like a monster. He's not a deformed Jason Voorhees. He's not a Frankenstein monster. He's not an uncanny, pale-looking, blood-eyed Dracula. No, not any of that at all. Ironically, he's actually the sheep in the intimidating wolf's clothing. And he honestly fooled everyone because it was Halloween night. If he had wore this any other night, this man would have been arrested immediately. If he hadn't worn this any other night and showed the true Michael Myers, the girls indeed probably would have asked him out. And this part really humanizes him and almost tells us, okay, aside the real man, that's Lori's current threat. And he has a name and a face. And she has to battle her specific pursuer. But once that mask gets thrown back on, now it is Dr. Loomis to finish his arc. And now he is out to stop Michael. Yes, you may have won this time, but this figure of evil that you and I are both aware of, it still exists. We did not kill it. It is still out there. Because you cannot kill the boogeyman.
Oh, you're still here? If we're not spooked out yet, all this talk about escaped mental patients kind of reminds me of the next movie I want to talk about. It's made by somebody that probably should have been locked up for being pretty crazy.
And face over there can think of some new way to ruin our lives!
Excuse me. You could just keep it down.
I'm talking to the cameras!
I've been wanting to talk about Barbarian since it came out, and I didn't really know whether I should do an individual video, and I figured today was the perfect day for it. So if you haven't seen the movie, obviously all of these movies are spoilers, especially this one. This feels like the biggest spoiler reveal out of all of them. So if you haven't seen Barbarian, please go see it. Skip this, go see it, come back, especially if you're a Whitest Kids fan. What are you doing? Because we all know that the first 30 minutes with this whole part about the double booking really plays with your instincts whether you should trust Keith or not. It has the whole thing where Tess is kind of just like checking all these things out about him, and you're just kind of very weary about the whole situation. Meanwhile, you're introduced to this character AJ and see that he is not somebody we should trust. He had sexually assaulted a poor girl, and as the audience, we're given that information, and it should build suspense for us, but it really doesn't. We're so caught up on the suspense of the real threat that actually doesn't happen to be Keith, but of what is in the basement. The suspense really builds when AJ gets there, and everything he does kind of just builds this comedic tone. When I was in the theater, people were laughing about this whole measuring out scene and going in the basement, but at the same time kind of just being like, don't go in there.
It had nothing to do about what AJ had done. I mean, obviously, we have good reasons to not focus on AJ being a threat. There's only a monster in the film. But we get so focused on the whole monster itself that we forget it's not really the villain of the story. And that this monstrosity of a woman is actually the victim. And that the real villain is Richard Brake.
If you think of the movie chronologically, it's really brilliant. There's definitely a shift in tone in the male dominance in this way, because here it'll start off with Frank, who abuses women and totally does not get accounted for his crimes, and goes on with it being years and years while his home looks just as good as any others. Meanwhile, it later goes into today's culture and everyone else's house are long gone, and it's almost weird how now the normal as any other house is now the uncanny one that sticks out for being that way. And it really reflects on the way of Keith. He stands out by showing that he's normal, because if you look around, that's reality. Not only us as the audience, but even Keith himself is hyper aware of the situation, because by this point in today's culture, everybody is hyper aware of the dangers that men are to women, who now we have the woman being the dominant. But Tess taking the lead definitely dominates over AJ too, because he's completely not rescuing any damsel in distress in the story by any means. If anything, the hyper awareness is that shows the difference between him and Frank's ability to pass by. Both of them are owners of the same house and are predators to women. Only when it's AJ's turn, he's the one that everybody can lock onto. As I talk about Tess being the strong female lead role, I'm not even mentioning the fact that she's black and how rare that kind of is.
She's so lovely!
So aside from feminism, I'm not even going down the road of the monument that this is for Black history. I could barely stay on track with this video, so much to talk about with so little time to edit. Yeah, I know, you're giving me so much to edit, so just shut up and stop talking right now. Oops, sorry about that. So
the whole movie plays with your instincts in the role of Tess. And then now we realize that the villain, the true villain, is someone who uses that guard of instincts and holds that against them. It really has you leaving the theaters thinking, can I really trust this man? He seems to be a person of this profession. He seems to be someone of authority. He seems to be sketchy. He seems like he could save me if I were in danger. Maybe that man is what he seems to be, or maybe he's not.
Like I said, there are plenty of great movies that I could talk about all day over this, but these are the ones I wanted to talk to you about the most. And if you disagree with anything that I've said or want to add or comment or anything, I'm all open for discussion. I'm literally so open for discussion. That's the whole point of reason why I put effort into this video. I'm always open to the idea that I could be wrong. Don't get me wrong, I could be wrong. So I really appreciate everybody that is still watching this video. Thank you for sticking with me and hearing me ramble and rant as long as I have. But obviously I probably don't really post that often. So who knows? This was something I was so passionate about that I wanted to take time and do. So who knows? Maybe I'll have another fire under my belly to do it again. Now, primarily, I want to thank my friend Casey Smith for asking and really encouraging me to really make this video just by asking. Basically, just letting me know there's people that want to see this. So I'm willing to talk about anything as long as people are still interested. Sure, why not? I've been able to kind of find a way to kind of still manage to do this and still get life going appropriately, because that's what it's like being a twin daddy. But if I don't happen to post a video at all, you can at least always find me updated on Letterbox. That's one app I've managed to keep doing. So if you want to hear video discussions or what I think on certain movies, I might write a review or two, or at least keep it updated and add some playlists. I have some good playlists for the spooky time if you want to kind of have a playlist just for that. So I like to make playlists on there. Or if you are interested, I have a little playlist of something I recommend you just hit shuffle and then get in the Halloween spirit. Because why not? kind of use it as like a nice little channel surf to kind of let me just shut my brain off and like watch it until I just pass out. I would like to say I really appreciate the time and effort that you guys spent watching this. Thoughts and prayers for all those people who have lost loved ones due to breast cancer. And that aside from all these horrors that women are fighting in these horror films, that you women are fighting the real battle. And this video is a kudos and a love and support from this end. So God bless.